From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And ahead today, K-State's Justin Waggoner is standing by to talk about adjusting feeding rations to deal with cold stress in cattle. He'll look at the temperature levels that induce that stress, given the condition of the animal. And Justin discusses ration options for boosting cattle energy intake in cold weather. Then K-State's Janel Koons has more information on that upcoming Women Managing the Farm Conference, a virtual event taking place 2 weeks from now. Janel will highlight the messages to be shared by the keynote speakers there, as well as some of the breakout sessions. And on this week's horticulture segment, K-State's Ward Upham on how grass competition impacts young landscape tree growth. That and more coming up on Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
This is our Thursday edition of Agriculture Today. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. Last couple of days have been pretty crisp around Kansas, and it brings to mind the topic that we'll cover here today with our guest out of southwest Kansas. Justin Waggoner is with us once more, Beef Systems Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. What we're about here, Justin, is dealing with cold stress in cattle, and that's an apt description of what we've seen last few days around a fair part of Kansas. Considerable stress along that line.
You know, that's right, Eric, and you know, that's not all that uncommon, especially here in Kansas as we get into the latter stages of winter is what I'll call it. That may be the optimistic thing here, is that all things considered, we're 6 weeks away from warmer temperatures and what we think of maybe being a little bit closer to spring. But oftentimes in January and February, that's when we do see some of our most extreme temperatures in the state. That can certainly have an impact on our cattle. You know, cattle are very robust creatures. They're able to withstand a large degree of temperatures. Oftentimes, you mentioned it, the thermoneutral zone. That's going to be the zone where those cattle are most comfortable, so they're not experiencing heat stress or cold stress. And as you look at cold stress, you know, more specifically today, you know, what are some of the factors that impact cold stress? And well, there's quite a few. One is obviously going to be the temperature and the conditions in which those cattle are in. Not only do we have the temperature, but if you add precipitation to that, if you add, if we factor in humidity, wind chill, and those kind of things. So often I recommend producers look at that ambient temperature. You know, as we talk about in a minute, these thresholds of where cattle would begin to experience cold stress, it's that real field temperature. What does that look like on our phone? And that's one of the nice things about today is, you know, we can get up in the morning and see exactly kind of what the conditions are outside at our location. And so I think utilizing that as a tool is certainly a good thing to do. In terms of some of the other factors that can influence cold stress, we oftentimes don't think about the condition of the cows. You know, if we have a cow that's in good condition, you know, she is going to be able to withstand colder temperatures better than a cow that's exceptionally thin. That might be a body condition score 3. So, you know, if we take a cow that's in good condition, has had an adequate time to grow that nice winter hair coat, that animal can withstand some fairly cold temperatures. We typically, in that scenario, cow in good condition, heavy winter coat that's been grown over a period of a few months, you know, we're looking at cold stress that really isn't going to begin experiencing that until about 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you take that same cow and we add a cold, wet rain to that hair coat, obviously when we wet the hair down, we reduce its ability to trap air and insulate. Insulatory value, I guess, is the term I'm going to use there. But, you know, if we do that, that's going to reduce the ability of that coat to insulate that cow. And so if you look at that wet coat, we can actually begin to experience cold stress on these cattle at temperatures as high as 60 degrees. So obviously, you know, once we wet that coat down, it really compounds the effects of cold stress on the animal.
those levels we have attained at certain locations around Kansas in recent days. Once again, those lower critical temperatures. So very pertinent to talk about this. What does this mean to the nutritional needs of those animals then when they're under stress? We think of all that goes into that need, protein and energy and such, but you say it really comes down to one main requirement here, Justin.
Yeah, so a lot of times that's a great question that you asked is how does that change the animal's requirements? And really the only nutrient requirement that's going to change on those cattle experiencing cold stress is going to be their energy requirement. That's going to go up. And so what we typically think of is that for every degree that we go below the lower critical temperature, that's going to be about a 1% increase in that animal's energy requirement. So if you think if we were at 10 degrees, 8 to 10 degrees, if that lower critical temperature is 18 degrees, which it would be right now in this dry haircut on these cows, and if it's 10 degrees, that's about a 10% increase in energy required to offset those colder temperatures. Now, what doesn't increase is protein requirements. So it's just simply energy is what we're looking at that increases under the conditions of cold stress. And so that's an important consideration that it's not just simply we can throw protein at that problem per se is going to fix it. The other situation that begins to play out, especially when we get an extreme weather event that comes through, is that a lot of times grazing behavior, especially on cows that are turned out, what do those cows do when we get a big heavy snowstorm that comes through? They keg up near something. They don't go out and graze. And so not only do we have this situation where our energy requirements are going up, but our grazing behavior is going down. So our ingested behavior is kind of working against each other at that point. So we've kind of got, two factors that are converging a little bit that producers certainly need to respond to.
Talk about that very thing then and how the producer compensates for those higher energy needs and that pullback on grazing behavior. What can they do? What can they provide in the way of a supplement to balance things out?
Yeah, so there's really a kind of a couple of different things. One thing that we'll see a lot of producers do is oftentimes when we get a weather event, it's very common to roll out hay. And what I recommend is utilizing a hay that's of slightly better quality than the forage that those cattle are currently grazing. And we can look at that a lot of different ways. If those cows are turned out on milo or corn stalks, a moderate quality grass hay is going to be a little bit higher quality than those stalks that they're on. We can also use in some instances, a blend of alfalfa or some other products that are going to be a higher quality forage, because those cows are going to have to eat less of that higher quality forage. In essence, at this point, it's a supplement. The other thing that we can do that works if we've got a high fiber supplement that we may be utilizing as a protein supplement. A lot of times we see producers today, byproduct use is very common. Distillers grains products would be another great example here. We can increase the feeding rate of those products. Now, yes, we are providing additional protein, but those products also do bring some energy to the table. And then, in some regions of the country, it's not at all uncommon to add a little bit of a higher concentrate, even corn, for example, 1 to 2 pounds of corn under the conditions of a storm front that may be moving through in combination with some of the other things I mentioned are all acceptable strategies with really the end goal here is to get more energy into those cows during this cold weather event. Another important consideration is, okay, cattle are fairly robust. How long do we consider a cold stress event?
Right.
If we change the manner in which we were supplementing cows every day that we certainly got below that lower critical temperature, we could be doing that quite a bit. And so normally what I recommend is in terms of a cold stress event and when to respond with the change in our feeding program, obviously when we've got a weather event that comes through. But if we also get, say we have fairly nice weather, with the exception of the cold. And if we see, though, that extreme cold for 2 days or more, that's really a good time to get in there and respond. Because, oftentimes what happens is we don't think about this cold stress as being additive. But if you look at the number of days that we may have experienced cold stress, and what begins to happen is those cows, we've had those years where our supplementation, our feeding program was very similar. But when those cows calve, we may be just a little bit behind in terms of our condition. And a lot of times what we can attribute that to is if we've had several days during that feeding period or that winter months where we would have had some cold stress, it begins to take its toll and add up a little bit, especially on those days where we're looking at a 10% increase in energy requirement. That energy has to come from somewhere, right? And so that cow's going to mobilize it from body condition reserves. The other place we see it a lot of times is in heifer development programs. Mm-hmm. In replacement heifer programs, they're pretty low input for the most part. We don't need a lot of additional weight gain on those replacement heifers at this time of year to get them to that target weight at breeding. We experience some cold, wet conditions in the winter. That can put those heifers a little bit behind, especially as we begin to look at our breeding programs coming up this spring. So it's always a good idea as we get a little further down the winter, do a check weight on those heifers, because that's where cold stress really starts to catch us, in that it does add up over the winter months to some extent.
I want to close this out by letting folks know, if they didn't know already, that there is a tremendous resource that they can access at the Mesonet website based here at K-State. There's an animal comfort index that they've been providing to producers for a couple of years now. And that isn't just about heat stress. It does lend some running information on cold stress possibilities, too.
That's right, Eric. That's a great resource to check out for producers, and they can dial it into their specific location as well. mesonet.ksu.edu. Animal Comfort Index. Have a look at that. Justin, timely word right here. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Beef Systems Specialist with K-State Research and Extension. That's Justin Waggoner on contending with cold stress in cattle and some things to watch for there that might suggest to you producers you need to intervene with supplemental feed strategies to maintain those animals' energy levels in those harsher conditions. And we'll be back with more. This is Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today, 800-321-3276, or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. Next up for you on This Agriculture Today, another reminder about that exceptional event that takes place every year, and as with many other occasions, this one will be online as well. The 2021 Women Managing the Farm Conference is almost set to go. Along with us now, one of the co-chairs of this year's conference. She is with the K-State Global Campus Office as a program coordinator there, Janel Koons. Janel, this is, again, an event which has really shined in recent years. It'll be virtual this year, but you've scrambled to make an outstanding program come together. How are the final preparations coming?
They're coming along very well, Eric. We've got all of our breakout sessions in place. We've got about 9 of those running over 3 days, and all of our keynote speakers are excited and ready for their presentations.
Excellent. Before we talk further, just the basic concept of this conference as it's taken place for a couple of decades now. Remind us of that.
Yeah, so we established this conference about 17 years ago, and we just wanted to recognize all the different roles that women play in agriculture, whether that's managing a farm, being a farm partner, maybe they're just starting out in agriculture. They might be absentee landowners with government or financial areas. So we just wanted them to have a place to come together and to develop knowledge and have educational opportunities, and also to network with their peers as an important part of this conference.
You mentioned that at the end, the networking. That's very much part of the success story of this event every year, isn't it?
Yes, and since this will be virtual, it's going to be a little bit different, but it's, very much like any virtual platform. There's going to be opportunities for participants to chat or see who's in the different sessions. They'll also be able to network with our sponsors for the conference and, get them to answer some of their questions and that types of things. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for them to network during and even after the conference.
And incidentally, the Women Managing the Farm Conference, Wednesday through Friday, February the 10th through the 12th, online. So you've 3 featured speakers around which the program is built. Tell us about them and what messages they'll bring.
Our featured speakers we start with Matt Rush on Wednesday afternoon, and he's going to give a presentation called Planting the Seeds of Greatness. And this is just kind of a motivational type presentation, and he's going to talk about planting new seeds so we can move forward into the future, which will be really timely for, the situation we find ourselves in and, just turning that corner as things will start to change once again. Matt has also recently authored a book called Stress-Free You. It focuses on how you can turn off different stressors, just kind of like a flick of a switch. So we'll probably touch on that a little bit. And Matt is also delivering a breakout session for us that's going to touch more on the stress area. For Thursday, our keynote speaker is Naomi Bloom. We've had Naomi come in the past, and she is just really great at presenting information about managing cash flow, farm marketing, different things like that in a way that's really understandable to folks. So we're really excited to have her. And this is just something she does on a regular basis in her career, is training, especially women farmers, on marketing and cash flow type issues. And then finally, we have Mary Kay Thatcher. And Mary Kay was a longtime lobbyist for the American Farm Bureau Federation, and she currently is a government relations team for Syngenta. So she will be able to talk about how this recent election is going to affect the agriculture industry. So we think we have some really great keynoters given, the different changes that have been happening in the past year, and we're really excited for this lineup.
And those keynote presenters are setting the tone for the breakout sessions that will follow each of them on Wednesday and Thursday afternoons and Friday morning, respectively. As you look at that lineup of breakout sessions, which ones jump out to you immediately, Janel?
There are a few, again, that are going to tie in with some of our keynoters. So we have Naomi Bloom. We kind of have a session that is going to mirror that with some of our specialists here at Kansas State University. They're going to cover cost reduction and crop marketing in that particular session. Again, we're going to have a couple sessions on mental health and stress management. And so you'll get to hear from experts from Matt Rush, who again is one of our keynoters, to other experts with K-State Research and Extension. We'll also hear some popular topics like farm succession planning. We have the well-known attorney Roger McOwen that will be speaking. And as well as healthcare, we have a great healthcare expert here in the state that's going to be delivering a message on healthcare.
And you have one that's somewhat applied about tractor maintenance. That's unique to the Women Managing the Farm Conference, isn't it?
It is. You kind of stumble over that one, I would say, since the conference is virtual. But we do have a presentation that's tractor and equipment maintenance. And we're actually excited because we have tried to get this one going in an in-person format, but it actually came together really well for this virtual conference, and we'll be able to record it and have it in our resource library. So there should be lots of opportunities for women to view this and learn more about saving money and maintenance down the road by taking care of your equipment well in the beginning.
And you look elsewhere on the breakout agenda, there are sessions on direct marketing meat and other food products here in Kansas, on livestock fencing considerations. That'll be an interesting angle. On urban agriculture and inner-city food deserts, as they call them. And on what they're calling taking care of all the generations on the farm. How technology can assist in keeping everybody in the farm family engaged in those day-to-day activities. It's quite a gamut of topics, and all of this is applicable to the situation on the farm or ranch today, and lots to pick up on here. Plus, there's the sponsor booths that folks can take in. They're virtual as well, but you're encouraging that as part of the program, too.
Yes, we've had continued support from our sponsors for this conference, even in the virtual format, and we're excited that they'll be able to have booths throughout the conference where participants can, go into these booths virtually and maybe talk with a person from these different areas, either at that time or they can set up a meeting for later. They can also view through our resource library. Some of our sponsors will be giving educational topics in our resource library that they can access at any time.
So you're accommodating all sorts of things with this virtual format. As far as registration goes, the process, tell us about that.
So registration is online. That's through womenmanagingthefarm.com. There is a $50 registration fee, and that's going to include everything that goes along with the conference. And it also includes access to our conference app, where you will access all the keynote sessions by video and be able to network with your peers, and also access to that resource library we talked about.
So you can take the conference in on the go, mobile, through that app.
Yes, that's correct. On your phone, on your tablet, or on your computer. So however you want to access it.
Very well. And it's as easy as going to the website to register?
Yes, you can go ahead and register online, payment by credit card. That's womenmanagingthefarm.com. It gives you all the details about the agenda for the conference, sponsors, registration, and if you have any questions about registration, there's some contact information on there as well.
And we won't go through the whole list, but the sponsors, of which K-State Research and Extension is one, are what makes this program happen. So you are very appreciative as the organizers of their assistance.
Yes, we are. We've had just enormous support from our sponsors this year, given we've moved to the virtual format. We really haven't seen any difference between being in person and being virtual from our sponsor participation. So we're very happy for their generous support and making it possible for a lot of these women to be able to attend a conference at such a reasonable rate.
That's testimonial to the value and the quality of this conference as it's happened over the last 17 years. And the latest edition is coming up quite soon, virtually. womenmanagingthefarm.com is that website. Check that out. And we appreciate your efforts in putting it together. And for the preview, once again here, Janel, many thanks to you.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Janel Koons with us. Her daytime job is as a program coordinator with K-State Global Campus, but she is serving as a co-chair of the 2021 Women Managing the Farm Conference. Be sure to take it in the afternoons of Wednesday and Thursday and the morning of Friday. That would be February the 10th through the 12th.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Next up for you, today's agricultural news headlines, courtesy in part of DTN. Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, the incoming chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, says she hopes that a Senate organizing resolution will be completed within the next few days so that she can take over the committee and arrange for a confirmation hearing for Tom Vilsack, President Joe Biden's nominee, as Agriculture Secretary, and then move on to other business. Stabenow noted she's gotten along well with former Senate Agriculture Committee Chairman Pat Roberts of Kansas, who retired in the past, and expects to have the same relationship with Senator John Boozman of Arkansas, who's expected to become the Republican ranking member on the committee. She said that she hopes they'll run it as co-chairs. Now, Stabenow added she's looking forward to the confirmation hearing for Jewel Brunagh, Biden's nominee for USDA Deputy Secretary. Brunagh is currently the Virginia Agriculture Commissioner and comes with a very strong background in farm services, research, and extension, according to Stabenow. Stabenow also noted that she expects a total of 28 nominees to come in before the committee for confirmation hearings, including candidates for other USDA positions, the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Farm Credit Administration, and the Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation, also known as Farmer Mac. The ushering in of the Trump administration back in 2017 launched large-scale deregulation at the federal level, including agriculture. Now, just a week in office, President Joe Biden already has announced a review of a number of federal regulations, including the Trump administration's Navigable Waters Protection Rule, changes made to the Endangered Species Act as well, and national ambient air quality standards for particulate matter, also action that was taken to keep chlorpyrifos-based pesticides on the market, despite pushbacks from environmentalists. In an executive order signed yesterday to deal with climate change, the White House noted that among the first actions Biden took in office was an immediate review of what they called harmful rollbacks of standards that protect air, water, and communities. Now, when it comes to the regulation of water on farms and ranches, the pendulum has swung back and forth since 2015, when the Obama-era Waters of the United States rule drew pushback from states, from producers, and from other industries across the country. That rule was seen as a federal overreach and sparked concerns about private property rights. During his first days in office, then President Trump ordered the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to repeal and replace the 2015 rule. The EPA replaced WOTUS with the Navigable Waters Protection Rule, which is designed to simplify questions of Clean Water Act jurisdiction. The Trump EPA narrowed federal authority to 4 specific categories of waterways. Under that new rule, the traditional regulated bodies such as territorial seas and major rivers fall under federal rules, as well as perennial and intermittent tributaries, and certain lakes and ponds and impoundments. Also, wetlands adjacent to the jurisdictional waters were included. The new rule leaves oversight for other bodies of water to the individual states. On Wednesday, a group of 26 Republican senators announced the drafting of a resolution to preserve and support that Navigable Waters Protection Rule. And the Biden administration is taking a look at the Endangered Species Act. For decades, attempts to reform the act have been met with resistance in Congress and from environmental interests. Many agricultural interests have decried the ESA as ineffective, despite stringent regulation on farmers and ranchers. In August of 2019, the Trump administration finalized 3 rules to change that law. Most notably, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service removed its blanket rule in the act that automatically grants the same protections for threatened species that are available for endangered species. The final rules do not affect protections for species currently listed as threatened, but instead will receive protections tailored to species' individual conservation needs. Again, the Biden administration is now reviewing all of these previous actions. Well, next up for you on Agriculture Today, this week's edition of the Kansas Soybean Update. For that, we go now to Greg Akagi. Greg?
Janel Koons, CEO of the National Biodiesel Board, joins us. And Janel, MBB recently hosted its RISE 2021 conference virtually. What were some of the highlights of this year's virtual event?
There was a lot of great excitement this year. We got an industry that, as our slogan said, is on the rise. And so we were able to talk a lot about what it is that's driving demand for our products and kind of create some great 2021 excitement after a little bit of a tough 2020.
Because for the RISE and the demand that we've seen, it's meeting the carbon reduction opportunities.
Absolutely. And we talked a lot about that, how not just at the federal government, but states are now entering the equation of trying to do things to reduce carbon in their states. And so that's creating huge opportunities for biodiesel and renewable diesel all around the country.
That's all a part of NBB's Vision 2020 plan that you unveiled last year, too.
It is. You know, we see the opportunity to grow our industry, more than double it here in the next 10 years. And a lot of that is going to be based off of this big, strong push to reduce carbon from transportation fuels and home heating fuels.
You have to have really cooperation from the states, or the states states really start to embrace it, and it looks like they have.
They absolutely have, and it's not just individual states. Sometimes it's groups of states and regions. The Northeast part of the country is getting extremely aggressive as a group of states, and so we kind of have a little bit of opportunity and a little bit of challenge when you look at trying to impact legislation and regulations in a number of states across the country.
This was also an opportunity to help honor those who helped rise the organization itself, including a very familiar name to Kansas soybean producers.
We were so very excited to honor Kenlin. We actually named our highest award that we've given occasionally to our top supporters and champions, and we renamed that award the Kenlin Johannes Pioneer Award, and that will be forever that we will be recognized as Kenlin's contribution to our industry through that award.
For all the building that he did of the organization, very much a well-deserved honor, too.
Absolutely. Kenlin created literally the foundation of the industry in the United States and certainly the foundation of the National Biodiesel Board. And it's been 30 years of hard work, and we certainly wanted to recognize his important and critical contribution to the development of both the industry and the trade association.
Janel, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, Greg. Thank you.
Those were the comments of Janel Rehagen, CEO of the National Biodiesel Board, who joins us on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission.
Thanks, Greg. And a quick last reminder here to you corn producers. The first of those 3 Kansas Corn Schools, a webinar series, takes place this evening, and you can still take part in it. K-State's Dorvar Ruiz Diaz and Ignacio Ciampiti will be on that program. It'll take place this evening again at 7 o'clock. To find out more, go to kscorn.com. This is Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggle to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Next up for you on Agriculture Today, our weekly horticulture segment. And this time, a little something different for you here in the throes of winter as we are. A review of some research that was done at Kansas State University on starting landscape trees off right, how to promote tree growth via grass control around those trees. Covering this for us is Ward Upham, horticulturist with K-State Research and Extension. Now, this is a principle, Ward, that's been preached for some time, grass control around particularly newly planted trees. And this study tried to capture that, did it not?
That's right. Try to quantify the results. We pretty well knew what the result was going to be, but we wanted to know how big of a difference it actually made. And so we used 2 different trees in this case, as an eastern redbud and a pecan, and both those are not easy to transplant. And so we're starting out with a tree that isn't easily transplanted, and that kind of helps you decide what's going to work and what doesn't.
So these were not seedlings, but they were rather fairly established transplanted trees?
They were actually relatively small, and we're going to grow them for a couple years and then see what happens.
What were the variables you looked at here then, and as far as grass competition with those young trees?
Yeah, so we had actually 5 treatments. One was just bare soil that we kept bare with herbicides, just keep the weed growth down. The other was have that tree mulched to a depth of 3 inches. Okay, so in both those cases, you're controlling the grass. The other 3 had lawn grasses, but it varied on which grass you were using. We looked at tall fescue, we looked at Bermuda grass, and Kentucky bluegrass. Both the tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass are cool season grasses. Bermuda is warm.
But you let those grasses grow unchecked, was that right?
That's right. So we let them grow underneath the tree. And so there was direct competition with the root system between the grass and the tree.
So the only real care, you say, for the trees was a regular watering when necessary.
That's right. And we did fertilize according to what was recommended. But those were the only 2 things that we did, and all plants are treated the same, so there's no difference in that. So again, we let them grow for 2 years, and then we started taking our measurements.
And once more, that was the purpose here, to gauge that growth In what fashion? What measurements were you looking at?
Well, there are 3 different measurements we looked at. One was caliper, and that's the diameter of the trunk. Now, normally when we're talking about larger trees, you take it at breast height. It's called diameter breast height. These trees are small, and so we took it 6 inches above ground level. So we're looking at diameter of that trunk 6 inches above ground level. We looked at top growth weight. So after 2 weeks, we cut those trees off at ground level and then weighed that top growth. See how much growth they actually put on. And the third was leaf area and leaf weight. Now, that's kind of a thing. It takes a lot of time in order for you to actually measure, but it's a good measurement on how much photosynthesis is actually taking place by how many leaves there are.
Well, breaking down the results by those 3 measurements, what was discovered here, starting with the caliper measurements on those trees?
Yeah, caliper measures were twice as large for plots without grass than plots with grass. However, with Bermuda is only 50% larger. In other words, Bermuda grass did not affect the growth of those trees as much as the other 2 grasses. Now, first you think, well, that's backwards. Bermuda grass is really, really competitive. Why didn't it affect the tree growth? The real reason is because it's a warm season grass. And warm season grasses do not grow well in the spring and the fall when those trees are really actively putting out roots. And so there's less competition during the time of year those trees were putting on root growth, and therefore the Bermuda grass actually didn't cause as much slowdown in the growth as the other 2 cool season grasses did, the tall fescue and the bluegrass.
The cool seasons are much more aggressive in that respect.
That's right. They like that cool weather. That's when they put on most of their root growth, and so there's a lot more competition during the spring and fall.
And then you looked at, once more, the top growth and the volume, the weight of that top growth?
Yeah, so Redbud showed a 300% weight advantage for plots with grasses controlled than those without. Pecans, a little less than that, 200%, but still very, very significant. So there is a big difference on whether you controlled that grass or whether you did not.
And then there was that labor-intensive part of this, measuring the leaf area and leaf weight. What was discovered there?
So leaf areas were 200% larger in plots without grass competition, and leaf weight showed a 300% increase. Again, a huge difference between those 2. So controlling those grasses really made a difference as well.
So the conclusion was, as the premise was, that controlling grasses around those younger trees will certainly make a difference in their growth.
It certainly does. And so it's well worth controlling those grasses outside that trunk. Start with somewhere between 3 and 5 feet. You know, control everything within 3 to 5 feet of that trunk, and you'll get that tree actually to establish quicker and be a nicer looking tree in less amount of time.
And this holds for multiple species, obviously, not just the 2 that were tested in this particular trial.
Yeah, it does. It really should apply to any tree because you've got less competition, and competition is what reduces the growth rate.
One interesting facet, though, had to do with mulching around that tree as part of the control effort. The mulching in and of itself was not that much of a difference maker.
Yeah, it really wasn't, not between mulching and just bare soil. And that surprised us because mulching not only helps conserve moisture, which in this case probably didn't make any difference because your watering is needed, but it also helps keep that soil cooler, which you would think would help that root system. But there is no difference. However, I think most people are still going to want to mulch. I mean, it helps control weeds. It helps conserve moisture. There's a lot of reasons to mulch other than, in this case, just helping that tree grow a little bit better.
All right. Well, Ward, the findings of this study, homeowners can certainly think about this during the growing season, but maybe even applying this information to site selection for new trees where grass competition is likely to be less. Maybe that's a more favorable location.
It very well could be, but make sure you do control the grasses around those newly transplanted trees. Actually, you could start controlling that grass now. As long as it's green, if that grass is still green, you can go ahead and try to control it. Or you could just till it up. You could kill it that way as well.
Well, we appreciate the overview of this research out of K-State not all that long ago on grass competition and its influence on tree growth. Ward, many thanks.
You bet.
Over for our weekly horticulture segment, K-State Research and Extension, horticulturist Ward Upham there. And with that, our time is away for today. Coming your way tomorrow right here, of course, we'll get into the grain market trends for the week. K-State's Dan O'Brien will join us for that conversation. Of course, we'll hear from K-State's Mary Knapp on Kansas agricultural weather and more on tomorrow's broadcast. Please be back with us then, won't you, right here. Meantime, Eric Atkinson bidding you a good day for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.